I promised you a little bit of some generalized feedback from the interview. I gave each of you specific feedback at the end of the interview, and I shared some notes. But I want to talk a little bit longer form about how I constructed this and what it kind of means towards you becoming a more attractive candidate in interviews for whatever you're interviewing for in the future. Now, my talk is specifically about computing because that's my experience, but this might have translating to any type of profession, even if you're not looking at computing specifically. So my first question was around: are you thinking about future ramifications of what you're learning? You might have some general idea of what computing is, but have you really thought about how each individual course, and this course you took specifically, fits into that bigger plan, or are you just simply checking the boxes of going through school? Employers like somebody who has a larger vision that understands their skill set beyond just simply the things somebody told me to do. And so you may or may not have a great feel of how learning a programming language or a really basic tool fits into you being a professional someday, but it's worth starting to think about. It's worth asking questions on, having a dialogue. Ask the question, how is this going to help me in the future? And not maybe just assuming that you know what that is. Feel free to have those conversations. Ask those questions to your network of people, your instructors, other professionals. So the way to answer this type of question is carefully. So you want to show enough ambition that you have a vision, you have a goal, but you also don't want to be so specific in your vision that you disqualify yourself. If you say, "Hey, what I want to do is work on new systems and build new things," you disqualify yourself from jobs who don't have new systems, that have existing systems that might be building cool things, but within existing code. So think about how specifically you want to be and what your vision might come across as other people. But stay open that you do have a vision, you do have some ambition, especially over time, so that way you seem like an up and comer, like somebody who's exciting to work with, who's going to bring new ideas to the position as well. The next question was around adversity and how you deal with adversity. And it's not a tell me your worst feature, tell me your biggest weakness sort of question. That's kind of, I mean, it's kind of a strange question to ask somebody. Um, but it's more about telling a story of how you overcome challenges that we know in computing there's always challenges. But we want to have people who both do their homework and get informed about the challenge, but also reach out to their network of resources appropriately. We don't want people to say, yeah, well, it took me 3 months, but I finally solved it. It might be like, well, I did all this research and then I talked to somebody and I had this epiphany and I solved the problem quickly after that. We're collaborating with others is an important aspect of dealing with adversity. And so a very specific story is important here. The story shows you being involved. It shows you being an active participant. I could tell a story to say like, yeah, this one time I worked on a project and we had this security failure. It was totally, slowing us up. We were ready to deploy, and like a month later, we were still trying to get the security failure, and then we fixed it. Now, it's a fine story, but the specifics matter. That same story for me was we were working on a .NET project. I was the architect of the project, and we basically had a bunch of developers that built code. I was talking about the big system level stuff. My developer's code was working fantastic. Everything worked fine in the test environment, but the second we went to the production environment as an initial test, nothing worked. It was a new system in this case, so we were able to go into production. It was great, but all the security was down. We couldn't figure out why for weeks of looking at it. I finally got a hold of Microsoft, who opened up a ticket and had us send the log files. Microsoft, they took a while to get it. It took about 10 days to get back to us. But in the meantime, since we had those log files, I was actually able to do some tracing straight through the direct internet connection, and all of a sudden, boom, we found in the logs it was actually a security flaw. It was a setting in the operating system where the key was not in the right place and it wasn't seeing the key, and it was hiding that as not to have the security leak of knowing what was wrong in the error log. So essentially, it was a really simple problem that had nothing to do with our code, but we had to really unlock the proper logging in order to be able to find it. So again, in that story, it's not you know earth shattering. I didn't learn something a big epiphany, but it showed how basically when I was able to step in, I was able to follow my resources and within a day or two find a problem that other people had been working on for weeks. And it's just really a matter of that big picture thinking that I was, bringing to the story essentially had that theme that I can use my resources well and bring that big picture thinking. Because one of the other questions that I set up here was the idea is how do you become a lifelong learner? In that example, I was not a .NET programmer. I never programmed .NET stuff. I never was an architect over .NET stuff. That was the first time. But at the same time, I was able to dive into the system because I understand how to learn about stuff. I know how to understand how to use my resources. And that's something that employers want from you. Not just simply taking a class and learning something, but how do I look beyond that? Now, yes, we all look at YouTube. Yes, we all look at Slashdot. Yes, we all look at online courses. But a story of how you pull those things together does such a better job of being able to portray the exact path that you take to learning, the exact path you take towards, in bettering yourself and solving problems for them in the future. And so this comes around to the last little bit of the theme here is this idea of systems thinking. This last question was about how do you expand beyond a single class, a single idea, a single programming language, a single data structure, a single concept or a tool, and think about how to use that to solve problems, how to use that to change your practice. It's not an easy thing to do. It's not something that you just look at, hey, there's a hammer, now I understand how to build stuff. But it's a matter of building more stuff, finding, again, stories of where you built stuff, and finding connections between things you've done in the past and ways you can solve problems in the future. And so this last question is really saying, do you think beyond what people are telling you to do, and what you could do to think about bigger problems and how to solve bigger problems, how to be a more efficient, effective programmer? Um, Again, I don't think that's a read a book and understand. I don't think that's a take a class and understand. I think that's a apply this knowledge in interesting ways and see where things fit, see where things need to be tweaked, and see how you can solve bigger problems. All right, so that's just a quick overview of some of these questions, kind of what I was thinking inside of that. I do want you to be a great interviewer. I want you to stand out and get every job you interview for eventually. And the best way to do that is now in every assignment you do, every project you work on, basically everything you do in your internships or co-ops or your career early on, you think about how that might benefits you in the future, and you think about a story of how that might be compelling to somebody else, and you share those stories to practice them and be really, really effective when it comes time to interview in the future.